Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah TV. As always, I'm your host, Ismail Bullock. And today, inshallah, we will talk about Qadr. I want to connect that to how we relate living, on the means that we have, and being content to some extent, and relating that to Qadr and many other related topics. Do that with me, inshallah, is Ustad Muawiyah Taka. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair for coming on.
Thanks for having me. So, to begin this discussion, I think the best place to start is the hadith of Jibreel, alayhi salam. So, as everyone knows, a very famous hadith, everyone knows the hadith of Jibreel. Well, not everyone, but most people know the hadith of Jibreel, and it's called the hadith of Jibreel because exactly that. As the Sahaba were seated with Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man came out of nowhere. No one knew who he was, where he came from. All they knew is that he's not from around here, so therefore he's coming from outside of the location. But yet he's still very clean. His clothes is very white. His hair is very black. There's no sign of safar, of journey.
Especially in those days, you were coming through the desert.
Literally,
people might be listening and they're thinking of aeroplanes and stuff. Oh, I always look smart, but this would have been traveling through a desert, the winds, the sand.
Literally.
So they would literally come creased up, disheveled, hair maybe, hair all over the place,
Especially if there's no sign of even a riding beast, so therefore you actually have come by foot. So this person came out of nowhere, which looked odd. It was basically, the point is why Umar Khattab mentioned that it was unusual. And then he came to Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and sat in an unusual way, connecting his knees to his knees, putting his hand on his thighs. Everything was so unusual. And then on top of that, he said, "What is Islam?" And the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, explained to him what Islam was: the Shahada, the Salah, the 5 pillars of Islam we know of. And then he said, "You spoke the truth." And then again, more unusual. You're asking a question, and then he's telling him you spoke the truth.
And he's saying it to the Rasulullah.
And saying it to the Messenger of Allah. So the whole scenario seemed so odd, so surreal, which is why it stuck in the minds of the companions. But the point here is that the second question, what is Iman? And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressed by believing Allah, the angels, the books, the messengers, the hereafter, and also Qadr, the good of it and the bad of it. Now, belief in Allah, we understand what that means, generally speaking. Belief in the prophets, as we know, we believe in all the prophets, not just Messenger of Allah, not just Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all the prophets, Musa, Isa, Ibrahim, all of them. We believe in them, we accept them as being prophets. I would even suggest that we believe in them more than the Jews and the Christians, for various reasons. Also, we believe in the books. Again, we believe in all that has been revealed to them, bil jumla, generally speaking, meaning that we believe that things was revealed to them and that some of those things were documented and recorded. How much of that has remained uncorrupted to today, that's another discussion, but we believe in that holistically speaking. We believe in the angels, that Allah has created angels as well as created mankind. And what's interesting about that actually is that Allah made that a part of Iman. I never said believe in angels and the jinn, which is interesting. But nonetheless, believe in angels. Allah's given certain angels certain tasks. And so on, like angel Jibreel and the rest of it. We believe in the hereafter. Qiyamah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, that there's a hereafter, there's paradise, there's hellfire, there's a hisab, there's a judgment, and the sirat, and all the affairs of the hereafter, we believe in that. Included in that will be the affairs of the punishment in the grave. These are all affairs of Iman, we know, and you can almost say they are internal things in terms of belief, and they have their manifestations in our limbs, but they're there. But the last one, I would say the challenging one, Qadr, belief in the pre-decree. What does that even mean? Well, before that, and the Messenger of Allah didn't just say belief in Qadr. is a belief in Qadr, the good of it and the bad of it. And I would explain that, what do we mean by the good and the bad? As in the good and the bad, in our perspective, in our view. As in, from our subjective view, sometimes things may perceive to be good, as in what might be good for me, might be bad for you. What might be good for you, may be bad for me. So this issue of good and bad is relative, but the good of it and the bad of it. So this is the holistic approach of Qadr. So what is Qadr? Qadr is the pre-decree that Allah has decreed and created this creation. Allah has manifested and set in stone, set in motion all the affairs of this world, from the beginning of it to the end of it. Our discussion right here, Sharjah TV, the country of the Emirates, all these things that's happening around us, all these institutions, these affairs, everything around us is part and parcel of Allah's decree. Now, one way to explain one way to explain things sometimes is through contrast. Okay, what's the contrast? So, as some listeners may know, I wasn't born into a Muslim family, I was born into a Christian family. So, how did I view Qadr as a Christian? For example, how many Christians may view Qadr? That Allah created things, and Allah may have effects in the world, but I have control of my own actions, for example. So I will do certain things, and maybe Allah might want me not to do it, and then He will stop me, but other than that, I'm doing what I'm doing. So you can almost see there's almost like a separation between Allah's actions and the creation, what the creation does. Another example of that manifestation of that is that they would say, the devil did this, as if the devil does things and Allah does things. Now, no doubt, Shaitan does things, we do things, everyone does things. But the devil's actions or Iblis's actions isn't independent of Allah's decree. Iblis, the angels, the jinn, mankind, they're all within Allah's qadr, or within Allah's decree. So when Muslims believe in qadr, we don't believe in the predestination as in Allah in control of the big things, whereas we're in control of the small things. Allah has predefined and controlled and set into motion every single thing, everything. And this is very, very important part of Muslims' belief and Muslims' actions. And accepting that as a belief and internalizing that as a belief becomes very important, which is what we're here to discuss. And to focus on specifically the issue of khayrihi wa sharrihi, the good of it and the bad of it. So basically, when it comes to the belief in Qadr, I'll say my message to the listeners today will be that Qadr is a belief, is something we need to accept and internalize, not just for the big things, but for also the small things. So here's an example. Often some people might say, oh, some big event happened or some tragedy happened. They will say, Qadr Allah, Allah decreed it. So you find that sometimes in our daily lives, we only really think of Qadr in major events. These major things happen, and you mention the word Qadr as a means of just accepting something inevitable. But it doesn't really manifest, it doesn't really go beyond the odd times you might mention it here and there. Which is why I said we should not think of Qadr as just something for the big things. It's something for the big and the small, and basically the everything. Qadr is something for the everything. So let's talk about Qadr in our person. Let's talk about the manifestation of Qadr or the belief in Qadr in our person. Because I wanted to address how can we address or look at Qadr from different aspects. One of them is our physical person. So we live in a society, and I'll say we, not just we as in sitting here in UAE or in London or whatever, we as in the globe, because literally we've become a global village. I just actually saw a video actually, Sheikh Fawzan rahimahullah, he mentioned that in the past, if someone did something evil in another village, it's in that village. We have no idea what's going on. And it stays in that village. It's just over those who are, but today, the guy in the village who did something evil or some good, everyone now hears it, and now knows it, and now sees it.
It's true.
So because we've now have access to all the information across the whole dunya, that now allows us to see things that we wouldn't normally be exposed to. And not saying bad things, I'm saying see things. What are those things? Number one, people. We are seeing people. So if you imagine in the time of Messenger of Allah, the people you would see are literally those in your town. And that's it. Maybe you don't even see them that often. Maybe you only see them at time of Salah, and that's it. You literally, can you imagine years of your life just seeing the same few people? And even then, you only see them in certain frame, in their best attire, looking the best, in the best manners. So your world is very, I would say, polished. You can always say it's very polished, very refined, especially in an Islamic environment. It's very refined. That's one of the reasons why hijrah is important, because you kind of get a more refined environment. But now we're in this environment, a society where we're seeing everything. We're seeing that which is polished and that which isn't polished. And on top of that, we're seeing that which is polished beyond reality.
Yeah, it's true.
We're seeing things which isn't even real. So now, because we're seeing and exposed to all sorts, we now look to ourselves and our own person. And some of us are not happy. I don't look a certain way. I'm not tall enough. I'm not dark enough. I'm not light enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not muscular enough. So we now, I would say, this exposure hinders or affects our Qadr even. Or I would say our Qadr, our belief in Qadr needs to come in line with this, or it needs to help us deal with this. Allah has created us a certain way, to be a certain way, to look a certain way. And from the Iman and belief in Qadr is accepting what Allah has given us. That's why if you look at some of the parts of the Sharia, like for example the prohibition of putting a gap in our teeth and removing the eyebrows. These were, and I guess probably are, actions of tajmeel, of beautification. But it's not just beautifying yourself by adding short-term zina, it's beautification by an actual modification. That's the key word, beautification by modification. Not beautification by idafa, by adding, like makeup and kuhl and the rest of it. It's actually by changing our physical being. And we are definitely afflicted, as in literally afflicted with this trial of what we see. Especially I wasn't about to say especially the women, but even men are afflicted with this now, whereby men look at their own bodies and if they don't like what they see. They want to be this way, they want to be that way. And some even go as far as to pay actual money to make physical changes. Why would you do that? Because you're unhappy with Allah's Qadr. You haven't accepted what Allah has decreed. And from accepting and acknowledging that Allah's created you the way they are, you the way that you are, and not top of that, as part of worship, Allah has prevented you from altering that creation. Therefore, from Qadr is to accept that. Sami'na wa ata'na. And interesting, when I was growing up, my stepdad, when I was young, I made mockery of one of the kids in my school. So that person looked ugly and blah, blah, blah. I was a kid, innit? And he said, don't do that. I said, why? The person is like that. And he said to me a word which, to this day, it sticks with me. And I even tell my own kids the same phrase. And I'm saying it now on TV. He said, they didn't create it themselves.
Oh.
Why are you laughing at them of something they had no control over them? They have no control over how they were created. That's how they are.
I'll hold you on that point. Time for a break.
Dave.
Join us, inshallah, after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Just before the break, you mentioned that point as a child, and that you'd said someone was ugly, and then your stepfather said to you, like, why would you do that? They didn't create themselves.
Exactly, yeah. And that's because, number one, he's highlighting that effectively you're rebuking and putting someone down for an action they had no role in. That's a very important point. Sometimes when we might rebuke someone or critique someone, as a Muslim, we can only really critique someone for that which they had control over. So we say, this person, I can critique him, I can praise him for accepting Islam. MashaAllah, this person's a Muslim. MashaAllah, why am I praising him? He chose this. Can I praise this person for being Iraqi? Can I praise this person for being British, for being American? Can he say, yeah, I'm American, I'm so great? That's not, you didn't choose that. You were born there, you landed there. Allah decreed that you happen to be that nationality or that qawm, that nation. You didn't achieve that. And I even mentioned that to someone who said, yeah, I'm proud to be Somali. I said, but why are you proud why are you proud of something you had no hand in? You should be proud of your actions, your deeds. I'm happy that I was a good person. Not happy that you have a passport that was given to you at birth. So Qadr is, so basically you're saying that you can't criticize a person or critique someone and even praise someone for that which they had no hand in. If someone happens to be attractive to your personal preference, say, MashaAllah, Allah's given them that which is good. And if someone happens to be other than that, Qadr Allah gives to someone, don't give to others. But it's not something that you can be praised with or happy with, it's just something that you accept as part of Allah's Qadr. Another one, which is connected to the person, physical abilities. So-and-so can run fast, I can't run fast. So-and-so is good at basketball, he's so tall he can reach the hoop, I can't reach the hoop. Qadr Allah, you can't change that. There's no reason that one should feel upset and down and sad about not having what others can have. But why? Allah has created diversity. Allah has created mankind in different forms and shapes and likes and desires and ways, and all different. Diversity. And this is from the blessing and mercy and from Allah, and actually a barakah from Allah. We can't all be the same form. We can't all be basketball players. We can't all be the best football player. We can't all be the strongest person in the room. Someone may be given the virtue of strength in their badan, in their body, where Allah has given another virtue to someone else. So at least we can capture all areas. And that's part of what makes a society. A society is a collection of people who, on their own, they're not perfect. But as a whole, they fill each other's gaps. If you accept that as a reality, that we as an ummah, collectively, we fill the holes that need to be filled. We all fulfill the roles that need to be fulfilled. And we acknowledge that we can't all do that role individually. Therefore, by their very nature, we have to accept differences. And it might be the case that you have to accept that, yeah, okay, I'm not tall, so basketball's not for me, so I have to choose something else. That's from Allah's Qadr. And one shouldn't feel down or depressed or upset about that. It is from Allah's Qadr. And it's from the Iman of the Muslim, they accept the Qadr, khayrihi wa sharrihi. And once you've internalized that and you recognize that, the next question is, okay, how do I move forward? How do I address that? You acknowledge, I don't have this, but I do have this. You stop looking at what you don't have, you start looking at what you do have. No one on planet Earth has nothing. Everyone has something. So, and I can even flip that on his head by saying, no one has everything. So someone will always have something and not another thing. It's about you looking at what you do have and trying amplifying those things.
And that reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet. He said that whoever, rises or wakes up and he has a roof over his head, and he is, safe, and he has his daily food, it's as if he has, as if he's been given the whole world.
Yeah, as in his needs have been met, and that is sufficient for him, and therefore anything zaid, anything additional to that is extra. Another thing, just a final point to do with the qadr of the badan of the person, is health. We're not all given good health. Sometimes someone's born with bad health. Sometimes someone's born with good health. Sometimes the person was born with bad health and then Allah gave them siha, good health after. Sometimes they're born with good health and Allah gave them illness after. This is something from Allah's qadr. We do our best to address health, to improve our health as much as possible, but it is limited to what we can do. It's not something that we must. The issue, I guess the key here, and this point here is, and other points coming as well, is that there isn't something you must have. It's what you are given. And we as Muslims are grateful and happy for what we are given. And this, I would say, is one of the real manifestations of Qadr. This qana'ah, this satisfaction and acceptance and happiness of what we are given. You can only do that with the belief in Qadr. Another topic of Qadr is Qadr in our family. That's a very big one. We all have families. And I remember growing up, looking as a child is quite interesting, because as a child you see things and you think, due to naivety, you think that you don't have and others have. You look around, say, oh, he has this, and I don't have this. And the reason why I say it's naive, because you're a child, is because as a child you're unaware that what you may see is that they have, there are many things you don't see that they don't have. As an adult, however, you recognize through experience, through life, through your teachings of Islam teaches you recognize that everyone has things that they want and don't have. And from that is family. So for example, maybe you're from a family who you only have your mom and dad and maybe one other brother or sister, and that's it, small family. Maybe not even a brother or sister, maybe you're the only child. Maybe you only have like one or two aunties or uncles and that's it, you have a small family. And then you marry into a family who has a big whole qabila, whole tribe. You think, I wish I had a big tribe like that and whatnot. But that's Qadr. Not everyone can have a big tribe. And the irony is, so many people who are from that tribe, that big family tribe, they look at you and think, I wish I had a small family like yourself. I have to deal with this family. I'm always visiting family, I'm always visiting friends. The grass is always greener on the other side. But why is the grass always greener on the other side? It's because one lacks the belief in Qadr. With Qadr, you accept that Allah has given every individual different opportunities, a different path, and given you different tasks. It's almost like an exam. It's like an exam in school. Imagine you had an exam in school where every person who takes the exam is given a different paper. You're not all given the same paper. We're given a different paper. Maybe this person gets 1 + 1, you have to write 2. Another guy gets 1 + 2, he writes 3. Different questions. It's the same exam. I mean, it's both our exams, but the questions are different. Same with us. We're all given different lives. We're born in different places, different locations. We're born in different families. So we shouldn't feel as though I wish my family was X. Your family is your family. Take what you've been given and do with it the best you can. So maybe you have an uncle who's not that very great and is always upsetting your mom and whatnot. Okay, those are the cards you've been dealt, as they say in the West. Those are the opportunities given to you. Look at that opportunity. Look at that life, that situation you have, that family. How can I worship Allah? How can I manifest the best in that one? Okay, let me help my uncle get a better job. Let me help my uncle improve himself. Let me help my mother. There's things you can do based on your situation that can improve your life and the lives of others, and that's through accepting Qadr, not looking at what you wish you had, but by focusing on what you do have and moving forward. Also, there's Qadr in location. I get this a lot. With a British passport, I remember being in Saudi and I had lots of people say, "Menain anta?" I said, "Where are you from?" I'm from England. "Ah, anta min Britania. Aslu eh?" And they always comment, "Where are you from originally?" But they say, "Okay, are you from England? Oh, how's it in England? How to get to England?" And they always want to know how to get to England because they think England means money. That's what they think. And I think, and the joke is, they want to go to England and I don't want to go to Medina. Same thing. The grass is always green on the other side, as they say. The issue is Qadr. What opportunities are given to you? You have been. The thing is, the issue of location is different because the issue is location. You can change this. So there's a difference between this topic and the previous one, like who your family is, how you physically look, and your physical ability. These are things that, to some degree, can't be changed. I mean, it can be. You can choose who you marry, and you can choose to improve your physical health, whatnot. But generally speaking, certain things of that are fixed. But location is a bit more dynamic. You could technically, with some work, change your location. And in that case, by all means, try and find a location that is in line with your deen, is in line with your what you want to do for employment, for your family, whatever you want to do. But the question is, if you can't, if you can't improve or change or better your location, the issue of Qadr comes into play. With the belief in Qadr, you accept what Allah has given you and you make do with that and you try to improve the best you can. So maybe you can't make hijrah out of a non-Muslim country to Muslim lands. You literally can't, for whatever the reason may be. So that being the case, make the best of the opportunity we're given to you. Allah's given you a task, given you an exam paper, trying to get the best grades in that exam. That may be in terms of improving the lives of those around you, maybe improving the location you're in, actually, even improving the location, building masajid, building marakis, building even amenities, whatnot. So there's different issue of location.
I mean, of course, it's important to mention as well, we're not saying that, say, for example, someone who's become very overweight, I'm not going to work out, this is Qadr.
Exactly.
But we're talking about, like, for example, I may be a certain height, you may be a certain height, and there's just some things that can't be changed. Unless you literally, like you said, people go now and they do leg extension surgery and crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
But even when it comes to you should always strive, right? Because we know as Muslims, we are we always aim for higher aspirations. So you may be in a certain job, a certain education, you try and study more, you try and improve yourself. And as we know, the Prophet, the companions, they asked the Prophet, in regards to Qadr, should we just, when it comes to this, should we just accept? The Prophet says, "A'malu," and work, because everybody will get what was written for them.
Yeah, exactly.
But you make the effort. And that's why, subhanAllah, I always say sometimes you see a person who is really has an amazing business mind. Amazing business mind. You can just see the way, and subhanAllah, he opens business after business. Nothing really takes off. And then you see a guy who comes and invents a crazy thing like a spinning top on the table, and for 1 year this is going crazy, and he becomes a billionaire, maybe retires for life, of a really literally a useless, silly thing that didn't require him to have any real, honestly, a real amazing business mind. Okay, he had a great idea, but it wasn't something that was in comparison to the other person who has those great business ideas that just don't take off. Because it wasn't written for him. But you make the effort.
That's actually my next point. So the next point was to do with Qadr, to do with opportunities. This is very, very important. If anyone wants to read biographies of successful people, let's say. So I read a biography once of Steve Jobs, and I read a biography of James Khan. These are two millionaires, billionaires, whatever. And one thing that stood out to me about reading these biographies of these successful people was that with all of them, or both of them I should say, and this is actually with others, I've heard of other people, with all of them, there was always that one event that if it didn't happen that way, they wouldn't have got what they wanted or got their point.
Hold you on that point, we'll talk about that inshallah after the break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Just before the break, you mentioned how you read the biographies of James Khan and Steve Jobs, and you noticed, you're about to tell us about there's always an event.
Yeah, so just like you mentioned the issue of someone who has a really good mind, lots of good ideas, but for some reason his execution of those ideas doesn't manifest in the results he wanted, whereas someone might make some silly fidget thing and becomes a millionaire. What was the difference between the two things? What I want to draw people's attention to is that, like you mentioned, we do the best we can and the rest is down to Allah. Success, I would say the connection between the issue of Qadr and success, this is the question of success. Success isn't your ideas. Success isn't even you. It's Allah's decree. Allah can decree that certain things take place that would lead to your success, things that are outside of your control. If one accepts this internally, then they understand that what that does for them is that it means you do the best you can and leave the rest to Allah. You turn to Allah in worship. Ask Allah for guidance. Ask Allah for success in your life, and you hope in Allah's mercy that He will answer that dua. But you take the means, the correct means, the halal means, and you work within the framework of Islam, and you hope for the good result, because the good result will come not because you just did the action, I mean that is the cause, but Allah decreed that the event will happen. So it brings me to the I like to think of it almost like the event of the Messenger of Allah, Allah mentioned, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You didn't throw when you threw, but Allah who threw. Now, what's interesting about that ayah is that Allah said you didn't throw when you threw. Which, if you look at the surface, what does that mean? What does that mean? You didn't do it when you did do it. So it seems almost like there's a contradiction here, because Allah's negating him doing it, whilst also affirming that he did it. So when you look at the tafsir, one of the Sahaba mentioned that they actually added, I think it was Ibn Abbas or Ibn Mas'ud, I'm not sure which one of the two. He mentioned, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِيصَالًا إِذْ رَمَيْتَ رَمْيًا. As in, basically what Allah was negating was the result. But what Allah affirmed was the action. You did the action of throwing the dust, that's what you did. But what happened, what was the end result, what was the natija? That was what Allah took for himself. So, same thing with us, if you manifest that with us and ourselves, although that event was a miraculous event, but it's the same thing. You have ideas and you might have opportunities, and you take those opportunities, and you do the best you can. But the natija, the end result, is down to Allah, Allah's Qadr. You do the best you can, and you acknowledge internally, you put it into your heart, this will only happen if Allah decrees it to happen. So if it doesn't happen, Allah decreed it not to happen. And if it did happen, Allah decreed it to happen. And with that acceptance, we get qana'ah, how do you translate qana'ah? Qana'ah is like satisfaction.
You become satisfied, content.
Contentment, that's the word, you get contentment.
Another thing is important to mention as well, that some people have to realize, is that sometimes Allah holds these things back because it would be bad for you.
Yeah.
So how many people, we hear people often saying, oh, if I was a millionaire, I'd give so much charity, but then we sometimes see in our life, maybe you know someone, maybe I know somebody, or maybe even more than one person, who, when they were average, for lack of better words, they seem to be more religious, they seem to be more practicing, they not that it's about appearance, but sometimes that has an effect. They had more of a religious looking appearance, I guess you could say. And then we see them later on down they've become more successful in the dunya, and you see that their religiousness into has decreased. It could be the appearance, it could be the fact that they no longer go to learn, they no longer see them in the masjid. So we're not talking about judging their hearts, of course, but so sometimes Allah will hold back from the person something because as a blessing for them, because of what they may become if they had that.
Yeah.
Imagine all of a sudden you have all the cars and all the money you could think of. Many people that because if we look at generally in the world now, generally speaking, those people who are like super rich, generally speaking, that comes along usually with all the other things, the women and the stuff. It's very rare that the person is able to completely keep himself away from the other temptations that come with money, because unfortunately you have all that money, they say you have, the world is your oyster, as they say.
Yeah.
So sometimes Allah will hold these things back, and that's why the scholars, they say as well, when you're making dua to Allah, you don't make dua and say, oh Allah, give me a job of £1 million. You don't go into those trivial specifics. Mm-hmm. And they even say, it's better to say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Well, give us the good in this life. Because Allah truly knows what that good is for you. Yeah. And the good in the akhirah, and save us from the punishment of the hellfire.
Definitely.
And they even look at it as like a bad etiquette to go into these trivial things, like, oh Allah, give me a Ferrari, and give my wife a Lamborghini, and all these kind of... It's very trivial, and they look at it as like a disrespect to some extent, to have this kind of request from Allah, but rather ask Allah for general goodness. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, even some books of fiqh mentions that there is an opinion, although I heard that it's not the strongest opinion, but there's an opinion that it is permissible to make dua in salah bimanazid dunya, for the worldly things. But I mean, my personal view about the issue of the affairs of the dunya is that the dunya is just a tool. It's a means to an end. And a person could be a good person or a bad person, regardless of how much dunya he has or doesn't have. And that's manifest in the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he mentioned that there'll be some who Allah has given him knowledge and wealth. And he spends his wealth in the cause of Allah, fi sabilillah. And there's one whom Allah gave him knowledge, but didn't give him wealth. And he will say, if I only had the money of kadha or kadha, I would do this of righteousness. And then the hadith says, and both of these are the same. And you have one who Allah gave him wealth, but didn't give him aql, didn't give him intellect. And he spends his money in all sorts of fasad, all sorts of evil. And the one who Allah didn't give him aql and didn't give him wealth. And he would say, if I only had the money of so-and-so and so-and-so, I'll do X, Y, Z of evil. And these two are the same. So when you see someone, he seems to be, like you said, a normal person, nothing out of the ordinary. And when he comes into money, you start to see him doing things which is contrary to Islam. It could be the case that this was always the case. He just never had the opportunity. Likewise, someone who, because likewise you find many people who have money and they do so many good things, but the joke is you don't even see that they have money. I remember when we was in Medina University, when we graduated, the university itself doesn't actually help students take their books back to their country. So you have to find your own means. I didn't know that. I always knew students have their books sent back, but I didn't know how. So when it came to graduating, I discovered that there's actually this one individual who just takes on himself to just pay for it. He's a hotel owner. He owns some of the hotels around the Haram in Medina. So that particular year, it was after September 11th, there was some people get a bit cautious about stuff. And that particular year, he said, I don't want to get in trouble with the government or anything like that, so I'm not going to send any books back. So we basically said, Sheikh, please, we need to get our books back, come on, man. So I went to go speak to him. So I went to his building. There's a big building where he manages his hotels. And everyone in there is dressed nice, the thobe and the qutran and the uqal, and everyone's all nice and pressed. I was waiting outside this office, waiting for this guy to come in. I saw this guy, just normal guy, like just no uqal, just thobe, like a normal bedouin almost. And that was the manager. I'm like, you would never know that he was a manager of hotels. But he was just very humble. Because the wealth didn't go into his qalb, it was just there, it was a tool. He pays for his life, his family, and he helps the tullab. And alhamdulillah, that year he agreed. We managed to convince him to send our stuff back. So the thing is, sometimes what happens is, I think with people, because they see the people of sin flashing their sin around, we associate the money with the sin. I don't realize that there are many people with money, because they don't flash their sin around, because there's no sin, we don't associate that with money, to make sense. They do mahasin, but it's unknown. Like we have many stories of, stories of Ibn Baz, for example, who they'll go to him and say, they'll tell them, hey, I need help, and he'll just write a check and that's it. You would never know he had wealth, he had money, but he would just help people. Even things that we found out after he died, he passed away, we found that there were people who say, they would help widows. No one knew would help them, only when they were asking what happened to their stipend that he used to give them to look after them, because it stopped, because he died. So, anyway, back to the point, issue of Qadr. So, opportunities and wealth. This is what I want to mainly want to talk about, the issue of money and wealth, and Qadr. Often, we want to do things, whether it's business or personal, but Allah has actually decreed at that particular time, at that particular moment, that you won't have the ability to do so. How do we address this? How do we deal with this? Well, number one, you can try your best to improve your situation, to gain the ability to do what you want to do. But it's possible that with all the efforts, with all the rami, all the throwing that we've done, it doesn't get to where it needs to get to, and we are unable to achieve what we want. We accept it. Qadr. Therefore, I look for other things. Meaning, we can't do everything. We only could do what we can do. And a big part of Qadr is accepting that sometimes there are things we can't do. Now, what's the manifestation of not internalizing Qadr? How can not internalizing Qadr, how would that manifest itself on a person's person and their mentality? Oh, why can't I do this? And why is this person not having this? And you're this and the other, and it's because of him why I'm not doing this. And you see, we're now trying to find an excuse, someone to blame, someone to point a finger at, someone to say this should happen, it should be this way. And this is what I really think people need to really be, it's really dangerous. It's a really dangerous trend many people have. This word, it should be this way. Why should it be this way? If Allah decreed it to happen, it happens. If Allah decreed not to happen, it didn't happen. You can try your best, and inshallah it will happen. But there is nothing that should be the way it should be. It's whatever Allah decrees it to be. Especially in the UK, for example. The UK has a lot of, I won't call it a socialist society, but it has many affairs that the government intervenes in and tries to help the people. In terms of NHS, for example, or there's many things that people do, like social help and whatnot. So what you find often, when people can't do certain things, because maybe the environment they're in, they say, oh, the government should do this. They should do this. So-and-so should do this. And I always say to people, but why should they? I mean, is it a right Allah has decreed that this is what they actually should do? For example, a husband should look after his wife. Yeah, I agree. I agree. A man should look after his wife. He should look after her, take care of her, give her clothing. He should look after his children. He should educate them, give them good tarbiyah. There are things that people should do by prescription. Allah has prescribed, we should do this. But there are many things that has not been prescribed. It hasn't been revealed from the heavens that it should happen. It's a nice to have. It's a great to have. It's not a should have. It's I want. And we should always distinguish between I want and should. Even my own children, sometimes they come to me as my own little tarbiyah to them. They say, oh, Dad, I need this. I say to them, do you need it or want it? There's a very big difference. Need means it needs to happen. We need to do all we can, let's rally the troops, let's come and let's make it happen. But there's some things which you want to happen, they don't need to happen. And I think with Muslims, we really, really need to scratch the surface of the decisions we make in our lives and our opportunities and ask ourselves the question on all these things of the affairs of this dunya, is it a want or a need? This is very, very important. And this is where Qadr comes into play in helping us manifest and deal with these opportunities. So to conclude on this issue of the Qadr then, to conclude this issue of the Qadr, if a person wishes to buy a certain product or buy a certain thing, one of the issues we have in this society of consumerism and advertising and the rest of it, we're bombarded with things which makes our wants feel that they're our must-haves. And they are just wants. And if Allah has decreed it, shouldn't be that we can't, are unable to achieve that. We shouldn't put ourselves into a situation where we now engage in haram to achieve the things that we want. That is not something that we actually need. And we should say, we return back to the statement, قَدَّرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Very important statement, and let me explain what that, just conclude. It is what Allah has decreed, what He wills, He does. If you internalize that statement and that phrase, this would be very important.
Jazakallah khair for sharing that with us, and also for the viewers to tune in. Inshallah, join us same time, same place, inshallah. And I leave you as always with the greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.